Okay, I'll address this question, but first let me just comment on on the previous one. I think it's a myth. It's a myth that we, the multinational, pay more than the Israeli company here, and all of us here get every 6 months a report, which is a global report by either Mercer and Mercer or Watson White. We are commoditized the engineering workforce. I know exactly how much cost an engineer in Indonesia, in Silicon Valley and Israel. I know exactly how much each one of my competitors for a given job paying in Israel. We know all this data. It's a data-driven decision, and it's not a gaming here. Now, before that, one thing, my colleagues here commented about what Israel actually gained from the fact that multinationals here. Let's be very specific. If you are engineers out of school, the best place that you can go, it's multinational. You will be nurtured, groomed, coached in a way that no other place can give you that. One. Second, you get a disciplined, structured, process-driven way to execute work. Third, you get exposure to global technology trends. Then you'll be able to work on bleeding-edge technologies.
So the Israeli companies will have only the leftovers.
No, I think that as it was said here, we are the best thing to continue. I believe that the multinational is another stage after university. You do your IDF service, you go to university, you are raw talent. You need to unlock your potential, and the only way to do that is through multinational. Then you become to be an entrepreneur, but you were shaped by a multinational in a very disciplined way to execute or to carry out work. But on top of that, multinational brings a lot of stability and job security, especially in down economic terms. You know that. It's the backbone of the Israeli high tech. We bring in top lab equipment and instrumentation to carry out the work. And for those of joining the multinational, I'll tell you, we are the most balanced way to do on one side what we call ambidexterity. On one side, you've got radical innovation, disruptive things. On the other side, you've got the incremental innovation. If you want to work on these two fronts, join a multinational. Now, with respect to a question about General Motors, you know, we all know that General Motors went through restructuring back in 2009. The company had a chance to kill this initiative up front because we were like very small initiative, and the company had a chance to stop or kill this activity. But we understand that the future of the company and the future of the automotive industry is here in Israel. Because if you want to get the non-traditional automotive technology, this is exactly the future. This is where we expand. This is where we compete with Google. I don't think that we compete with Toyota and Ford. We compete with Google and Amazon. And we understand that. We understand that the business model of selling cars is not the future. So basically, everything is changing. The ownership model is changing. You've got fractional ownership. So basically, GM has a standing commitment to grow. And by the way, since we moved here, without acquisition, we're gradually growing month after month, and we do it in a very methodical and structured way.
Thank you. Rick, you can refer to that, but also I would like to ask you about the relationship with the academy. Do you think that the Israeli academy is really contributing to the multinationals and also being contributed because of this activity?
Yes, so I'll take your geopolitical question for just 1 second.
Okay, that's important.
And address that for a second. So in the short term, my answer is there's been no impact. I don't get any sense from global IBM that there's any concern specifically about Gaza or what happened here in the past several months. You know, it's as I started my discussion, we're here over 60 years, and IBM has shared many of the trials and tribulations of Israel, and we only continue to grow here. And I expect that to continue. And sure, the greater the stability is for Israel, the better the environment is for multinationals. but I don't see any near-term impact because of the current geopolitical situation, my view, with respect to IBM. Our relationship with academia, our core of our research lab in Haifa really goes arm in arm with the Technion over the years. A high percentage of the researchers are graduates of the Technion because of the proximity of the research lab to the campus. It's a partnership. There's work together on curriculum and growing future potential for the university, and by the way, with Haifa University, which is also on the same campus with us, there's a close relationship. And I mentioned earlier the relationship we're now building, similar to what Deutsche Telekom has done with Ben Gurion University. We're in a very, and the Ben Gurion model, by the way, is a terrific model. They were really the pioneers, and we're benefiting from it. But it's sharing the IP with the university, shared research projects in the cyberspace together with the university, and then building a curriculum together for the future growth of cyber capability in Israel.
Thank you. You want to add something? Yes, please.
Yeah, there's something unique about the Ben Gurion University's approach, which unfortunately is not yet shared or broadly shared by other universities here in Israel. And actually the colleges have fared better on that than the universities. And that's adapting the curriculum to the needs of the high-tech industry at large, not only multinationals. So sometimes you get a feeling that there's like this funny dance. We'd love for graduates to be more attuned to stuff that we work on. And for some of those academics, this is cheap, low. They want to teach the high stuff, or for some other reasons, we do not get enough talent that's really ready. And that goes back to Gil's point. We're kind of grooming them, helping them bridge the gap between the theoretical knowledge and what they actually need. So Ben Gurion University is not like that at all. Those guys work day in, day out in academia, but in a corporate. And this combination is just very, very unique and successful.
Thank you. Now let's go now to a quick round about the question. No doubt that there is it's an impressive development of the multinationals centers, R&D centers and activity in Israel. But the question that I would like to raise is what can be done more now? And how to increase the spillover, the effect on the economy, the real footprint of the multinationals on the entire economy. Because what happened to us actually in Israel, that we find ourselves in a dual economy. From one hand, we have the high-tech sector with the multinationals concentrated in the center. From the other hand, all the rest of the economy is lagging behind. So my question to you is how the multinational companies really increase the effect on the economy, and what is the role of the government in this respect? Who wants to start?
Let me just quickly respond to that. I don't think it's the role of the multinational. We are a for-profit company. We do what good for the corporate, not good for the states of Israel.
So what is the right incentive to...
Now, as someone who works for the government, I will tell you it's the role of the government to set the condition for other multinationals to come over, to expand the footprint of multinational, and to enable that. We know that.
But you, in GM, you have a unique model. I was involved in that in 2007, that actually we promoted the idea of having that all activities that contractors, Israeli contractors is doing business with you. You are not just in the center. I mean, the center of the R&D is in the center of Israel, but you have relationship with other contractors. So I would like to ask you from your experience, what can be done more?
So first we remember when you were like 2 weeks in the job, I met you in the ministry, and this is true. But fortunately, our industry it's not just silicon or not just software. We do hard things. We actually build machine. And on one hand, we actually teach the most bleeding edge technology, the most advanced technology. On the other side, we're actually doing sourcing. And as we speak right now, we do have 2 people in the periphery of Israel looking for sourcing component for our assembly line.
Three things I'm thinking about. The first is I expect the Israeli government to put on its agenda to support the ecosystem, not only the multinationals, this whole innovation ecosystem. A good example, because we always complain about the government and give bad examples, so let's start with a good example. I was happy to read this week that we are opening a national authority of innovation, a decision made, I think, by the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Finance. So putting on a national agenda support and enforcement of innovation ecosystem, I think is the right way to go. That's on the good side. On the bad side, we need to make sure we don't make mistakes in trying to badly regulate something that's working really, really well. If there's something that's working well today in Israel is this ecosystem. And when I see different committees and different ministries starting to come up with ideas of regulation in a way that is more harsh than many countries have seen before, I think that would be the wrong way. So these are 2 examples of good ways and wrong ways. Then the 2 other things I would expect from the government, actually one more. It's an infrastructure thing. That's the only thing. I'm actually not asking the government for incentives. I want them to build the infrastructure on the education system. I am deeply concerned that today we are enjoying the fruits of the education system 30 years ago. And when we look at the PISA exams and when we look at OECD comparisons, our education, particularly in mathematics and sciences, is going the wrong way. Yes, thank you. So, if we can fix that, okay, and if we can, like you talked about, change the supply problem by giving higher education from an early stage, then continuing it at university stage, then we solve the supply shortage, that would be great. So, don't regulate in a stupid way, support the innovation ecosystem, and make sure our education goes back to where it should be at the highest quality.
I think it starts with the teachers and students for mathematics in the high schools, that it's going down every year. Who else wants to refer?
First, but there's kind of a notion here that it's the startups or the Israeli companies against the multinational. And I want to continue the line that Meir here started. It's not only, a flow of know-how and blood going through the different companies, but look at something that is very interesting. Many of the founders of startup companies actually came from multinationals. Okay, we speak a lot with startups, we meet, and you see that they take the foundations of usually a large corporate, okay, and they know how to make it just because they were part of large companies that are exposed internationally and know how to make things done at a larger scale. And actually this also plays pretty nice upon an acquisition. When you get a company with people and actually the leads there came from multinational, the integration is very quick. You see people that it's in their nature to be part of a large company, know how to interact with people, sometimes even came from US companies, so in our case it's even easier. So that's one thing that I think makes the 2 complement each other, not necessarily compete with each other. When it comes to activity here in Israel, I can only, give at least another viewpoint on the challenge of the education that I was also about to touch upon, and that's, at least from our part, what we're trying to do, and we see other companies do that as well, is work with those youngsters. For example, in Qualcomm Israel at Haifa, we go to schools, we speak with youngsters at the point where they still can decide. Okay, we tell them what is it that we do. We challenge them. Okay, we show them that going to the high tech is something that can help them realize their dreams and their aspirations. Okay, what else? We also actually work with students at I would say between the age of 12, 13 to 15, 16, where they still, are before the decisions they would take that actually would quite influence what they'll do in the future. So we work with them, the ones that choose to do that. Okay, we're not replacing, right, the educational system. We're kind of complementing it and giving it a push from our angle. And I think I hope we'll see some, results of these activities, and we're obviously not the only ones. But there is not much that we can do about teachers, okay? But one, or at least trying to see how we can enforce, and I'll not touch on things like salaries and stuff like that. I'll leave that to others. But one thing that I think there was an attempt to take people from the high-tech industry to the education. Probably that was one attempt, but I think we should invest in it a little bit more and have this not as a cliff, as a one-time transition from one area to another, but rather have this as a transition period. If companies, large companies, can allow a transition of people from our industry to the education in a way that along 2-3 years, people will be able to examine each other, by the way. Also, the education system can examine the people, because not all good engineers are necessarily also good teachers, right? So I think that's something that we can work on more.
Thank you.
Yes,
Rick, the conclusion remark, do you think there is a way to increase the spillover?
Yeah, so, of the members of the panel, I think IBM may be actually the most active in the Israeli market in terms of interacting with Israeli companies, selling to Israeli companies, and integrating our technologies in the country. And a place where I think there can be real advancement. We're not seeing the early adoption. You think of Israel as this high-tech powerhouse, which it is, and then you look at certain industries within the country, and they're not adopting technologies at the same rate as you would expect, given what's happening in the ecosystem around them. And one of the reasons is heavy regulation. One of the places where the regulators could help a lot, whether it's banking or insurance or telco, is think about ways to integrate cloud solutions into the entire ecosystem within the country. And you do that through regulation and loosening up regulation around some of those areas. That presumption that a bank can't adopt cloud technology is simply incorrect. One of the leading banks in Israel is working on a major cloud project today. It depends on the concurrence of the regulators. But I think the regulators have to help local industry be early adopters of technology. The second is just an obvious one. Intellectual property, which is this intangible, tends to leave the country. The people don't. The people stay here. The researchers stay here, much like was discussed about ways when we acquired Trustir. It's 50% larger now than when we acquired it. So lots of growth and talent and investment and the like. But the intangible intellectual property is leaving the country because multinationals are going to seek places where royalty flows are taxed at the lowest rates. And it's a simple proposition. I mean, the government is talking with a lot of multinationals about this issue. How can we encourage you to make us the center for your intellectual property? It's simply, it all comes back to tax rates. And you're deluding yourself into thinking, if I keep my tax rates high, I'm going to make more money. No, you're not, because it's an intangible. It's going to leave the country. You'll get a one-time payment for that intellectual property, but over time, you're going to lose the stream. So.
Okay, I would like really to thank our panelists for this, that shared with us their thoughts in this very interesting session. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Shana Tova.
Thank you, Yoelle. Thank you very much.